I'm Hari Berzins. Welcome to my garden. Today is June 2nd, 2020, and things have surely changed around here. After a few weeks without filming due to rain and rain and rain and rain, we've had about 13 inches of rain since we last filmed, and I think you'll see the evidence of that in how green everything has become. Aside from that, we're past our last frost date, and so the season is on full speed ahead. So I thought I'd just take you through for an update. And also as we go, I got my journal and I will take notes. And this is a really good thing to do as a gardener, is just to do a walkthrough on everything and just notice what needs to be done and make notes so that you can prioritize your garden chores. The other thing I was thinking about this morning and the difference in this season is, first of all, my garden looks better than it ever has, thanks to you all, because I have accountability. But a big thing I'm noticing is that I'm going to the garden almost every day, and that makes such a difference. Trying to go once a week and catch up is just so overwhelming. So really, maybe try to get out there every day and at least take note of what's going on. So we'll start here at the edge. I've got lilies coming up, getting ready to bloom. These are tiger lilies, maybe some other varieties, I'm not exactly sure. But they are going to be beautiful, maybe even next week. I've been working really hard in here trying to get rid of things that I don't want. This is something I really don't want. Once it gets going and goes to seed, it takes over. I think it's stilt grass. So I'm going to come up here later and just get my stirrup hoe on that. And so I'm just going to make a note, a to-do list, and I want to stirrup hoe the bank near the driveway. Next thing I'm noticing is that the hostas have been deer snacks, and they're really a delicacy for the deer. Unfortunately, because I love them, but the deer do too, and it's not an area I really want to fence, so they get those. The lilies this year have really spread out, so that's pretty fun to see. You can also see up here, one of the gifts I got from Joy Gardner was the Rose of Sharon, and it's leafing out, so that's fun to see because it's been just a stick there for several weeks. And the Comfrey is in bloom now. These sweet little purple flowers are great for the pollinators. You see bees on those all the time. And this plant is so great because it comes up, and you can see here it's starting to fall down, but then it'll shoot some new ones up in the middle, so it'll fill back up again. It has several growth cycles. It's medicinal, but it's also a great fertilizer, so I could cut these back and dry them out and use them as a mulch on the garden, which I'm thinking of doing this year. I spread a bunch of them around last fall. I just took a little root out of bigger plants and put them around here, and they're already filling in. So that's exciting. There's that lupine I planted from Delaney's, looking happy and healthy right there. And these violets are just coming up naturally, but I'm letting them stay because I think they're really pretty and nice filler. Got this mint that's really shooting out, and this is a great area for it because I want this to just fill up. Mint will definitely take over, so you want to be careful with it. So here's the little herb garden, and it's doing fabulously. I have thyme coming up. Last year I split a big clump I had and spread it out, hoping that each of those clumps would grow, and it seems like it might work. What I've been doing with my herbs is cutting them off throughout the season and drying them, and trying to supply as much of my cooking herbs, dried herbs, as possible that way. This week I planted seeds in each corner, sage here and here, so they haven't come up yet. I actually just planted them a couple days ago. So I'll be keeping that wet. The other thing that I've had to really keep my eye on in here is because I let this go to flower in the fall, it spreads seeds everywhere. So I've got chive seeds getting started in this bed. And so I've been trying to cultivate it every time I come by because I really don't want it to become all chives. Also, this is a Marigold Volunteer that I found in another, actually in the onion bed, and I dug it up carefully and moved it over here, and it looks like it's going to survive just fine. So that'll be a nice addition to this bed. So this is something, you know, to my point of coming here every day. It's like if I come out and just cultivate this even with my hands, these chives won't take hold. But if I give it a week or more, which has happened on occasion in the past, they really take over, and then it feels like it's a lost cause and you just kind of give up with the weeds. So just walking through and seeing the things that need to come out and taking care of them. It's hard to get very far sometimes because I see stuff and I gotta do it right then. But I am trying to be better about just making notes here. But that was just a little something. Of course, if trees are trying to grow, get those out. So this bed up here, I definitely got it ready, but I still haven't put anything in it. I'm kind of waiting because it's so shady here. I'm gonna fill up the rest of the garden first and then decide what to put there. And even you can see the peas are blooming here. So we'll have some snap peas this next few weeks, but they're really not doing great. And that's because it's so shaded through here. So. So the cherries are really fun to see up in the tree, and hopefully they're getting more tasty. I've been finding them on the ground because of all that rain. It's really made them fall out of the tree. So I did taste one or two off the ground and they didn't have much flavor at all. And that's kind of been a problem I've had with fruit trees. So I don't really know what I'm doing. So I guess I need to learn why my fruit doesn't have much flavor. But anyway, first year of seeing cherries, so that's exciting. And the birds are happy. So this bed is so cool. I love it. I love how these plants are doing. I have never grown broccoli that looks like this, ever. I was totally ready with the spinosad, as Adam from the Eco Village recommended, to take care of those cabbage loopers. And so far I haven't seen them, which is so funny and ironic, you know, when you're ready for something and then it doesn't happen. But that's great. I hope it doesn't. I'd rather not use a pesticide even if it is organic. But I mean, I'm going to actually get broccoli, which is just amazing. Same with the cabbage. They are forming heads here. I did have some snail damage, and I took care of that, as I shared with you, with the Sluggo, and that seemed to help. The outside leaves are chewed up, but it looks like the heads are forming fine. I've already had several weeks of lettuce to eat as I cut them right off. You can see the last one I harvested is here. And then it'll come again. So I just cut it, 2 or 3 inches above the ground and leave it, and then it grows back. Same with the spinach. I've had a couple harvests off of the plants. I'll do that one next. Same with the kale. I just take the largest leaves and just keep rotating plants. So we'll have that all season. I'm not sure how long the lettuce will last into the summer. The parsley, the same thing. I cut that way back, and it's been harvested a couple times now, and it's doing great. So I have all the parsley I need with 4 plants. And the Swiss chard is looking great too. So thank you to the Eco Village for getting these plants off to such a healthy start. It was so rewarding to put them in the ground so early and have something actually growing. And then at this point in the year, June 2nd, to have a bed that's this far along is just super rewarding. I'm really excited to be seeing ladybugs in the garden. Over the years, I've seen beetles that are not really ladybugs. They're actually more of a pest. Can't remember what they're called, but they're more orange than red. But lately I've been seeing what I think are really ladybugs, which is cool because they're beneficial in the garden. So when I harvest a lettuce, I'm looking for the largest one, which is this. And also, you know, that way when I take this out, it's going to give these two room to spread out. So I'm coming down towards the bottom here and trying to get as much of it in my hand as I can. And then I'm just kind of cutting it off a couple inches above the ground. And that'll feed us salad for a few days. So it gets a lot of dirt in there, so you have to wash it really well. But keep a bucket here for my harvests. The other thing I do is go in here and just take off these leaves that are on the bottom, kind of clean it up. I feel like that helps with preventing some slugs or pests to get in there. And I put that in my bucket for the chickens, so they get lettuce too. So these are the potatoes. They have grown so much, and I'm seeing that they're starting to flower, which they do. And I've hilled them up as much as I could with the dirt that I had. You know, as you recall, I dug down, planted them, and I had some dirt in the middle. So I've hilled that dirt back. So now there's more of a trench in the middle and dirt piled up around each plant. If I had more dirt and the ability to hill them even more, that would be great, but I don't. So now we just let them grow. And hopefully the moles aren't in there eating them. But that's another story that we'll get to soon. I've had a lot of volunteers of dill and cilantro show up, and I've left some of them because they're not hurting anything, and they are something that we use quite a bit. If I let this go to seed or flower, I use that when I make my pickles. The flower is great for flavor. And then, of course, cilantro is just a popular one for fresh eating with a lot of the chicken and Mexican food that we make. And so sometimes I pull them out because they're in the way, but when they're not, I just let them go. Why not have beneficial weeds? There's even some over here on the pathway. So I've been doing pretty well with keeping up with eating cilantro. My goal is to try and utilize everything I grow, and if I can't, to donate it to Plenty. Or share it. I've been sharing cilantro with all of the people who would take it. And it's been great. It's really fun to have that much to share. So I've just been cutting it back. You can kind of see where it's been cut, and then there's more to go. And then I'm not sure how it's going to go. It might be coming to the end of the season. As it starts to really warm up, the cilantro tends to just go quick to flower. And that's why I have cilantro all over the garden, because it goes to seed, it makes a lot of seed, and drops all over, and there you get your cilantro.
I love to take pictures of things on the farm and what we're doing, and especially beautiful crops or special moments. And we post that on Instagram and Facebook and share that experience with others. I think it's a good glimpse for people who aren't familiar with farming to get a sense of what happens on the farm and what goes into the creation of good food. I can do that with our connection through citizens. Fiber is good for you.
So before all of the rain, the 13 inches of rain, I planted peppers, like 10 of them, and I thought that would be plenty. And those may not make it. They are looking really sad. And luckily, I still had 8 plants left, and I went ahead and put them out here just this weekend. So maybe they have a better chance because it's warmer. Hopefully we won't get 13 more inches of rain. And, you know, I just went for plan B. And it's always good to be ready to do that because you just don't know what the weather holds for us. So I've got 2 right here. I put these stakes in to tie them up. Hopefully they get big enough that they'll need that. And then I have 6 down here, and I put 2 stakes in the middle of them that I can tie them all to just to hold them upright. And those are jalapenos. And then here at this stake, of course, I've my favorite weeds, dill and cilantro. But right here, I planted a cucumber, and one of them did come up, and I planted it next to this T-post so that I can tie it up, because it'll hopefully vine up and get lots of cucumbers here. And then on this corner, I planted some Zinnia Seeds because they're one of my favorite flowers. They also will attract the pollinators that I will need for the tomato plants that are right here. So it's always good to intersperse flowers with your vegetables so that you do have the pollinators that they need. And down in this corner, I planted some more seeds for sage. Sage is a great herb to cook with. It also flowers, so it will attract the beneficial insects, pollinators as well. These 3 tomato plants I traded a friend for some of my pepper plants. So that was an awesome trade. She did a good job growing them. They're looking really healthy. So where I have these sticks poking out of the ground, those are markers for me that I've got seeds here. This is a patch of cosmos, which are really wonderful for the beneficial insects, and they're beautiful. So hopefully they come up soon. And they're in this bed with beans, which will need the pollinators, as well as zucchini. So you can see I planted the beans every 4 inches, shared that process with you last episode. And I started to see a lot of damage here. I was thinking it looked similar to the damage I saw on my brassicas, which is from slugs, or maybe, I can't think of the name of them. I'll think of it in a minute. So I used the Sluggo here, and they definitely seem to respond to that. So hopefully they'll recover. But the zucchini are all coming up. Every seed I planted came up, so that was awesome. And those were planted before that big rain, so that was a positive, I guess, having that much moisture. The other thing that happened is, so you can see the sticks in the middle of the holes that marked for me where I have my zucchini. And also planting them in groups of 3 helps you to identify the seeds when they come up. And down here, I had a whole bunch. You can see they're not identified and they're not in the area where I was planting, but they look similar. That's because they are a squash, but last winter, luckily I remembered, I missed a butternut squash, and it was here in spring. and I just left it, so I know that it rotted and all those seeds grew. I was hesitant to use those volunteers because a lot of times squash will cross and produce a squash that isn't very tasty. But I asked some of my friends who've got more experience than me about planting volunteer butternut, and they said they've had luck with it. So I went ahead and took a risk and transplanted 6 of them into a lower bed that I'll show you. So if they really do produce butternut squash, we will have more than we need of that. And obviously I have plenty to share with anyone who wants to risk planting a volunteer butternut. And if nobody wants them, I'll have to get them out because obviously I don't want that many right here where I'm trying to grow zucchini. And the zinnias get pretty big in fall, but I'm thinking by that point these beans may be done, and so then the zinnia can kind of fill out this way. We'll see. I may have overcrowded, which is definitely something I do. I'm trying not to, but I can't help it. I want to fill everything. I alternated zinnias and cosmos, so here would be cosmos seeds. And again, it'll get pretty big, but it'll take it a while, so I might be able to time it well to take the other plants out. Then this would be a zinnia. Cosmos. And zinnia. And these are a stringless bush bean. And I like to grow as many beans as I can and blanch and freeze them so that we have them all year. So after all that rain, you can imagine, so much rain coming down, it really compacted everything, even with the leaves on top. And so I had to come through the garden with my stirrup hoe and scuttle everything up. And so you can see how those leaves are really becoming incorporated into the soil. It's not just totally leaves on top anymore, but it's still helping to keep it so it doesn't get so hard packed. It's a little tricky in between these onions. I almost have to use my hands to cultivate it. And the onions really took a beating from all that rain. They're fine, but you can see how they're broken in places and kind of falling over. So hopefully that doesn't affect what's going on underneath. But when I see broken pieces, I just kind of like to collect them because I can use these just as green onions. You can slice them up and put them in your salad. The other thing I've been doing here is looking in between them because when I cultivate, it's hard to get in between each onion, so I have to actually do that with my fingers. But last year, I know, as you saw, my garden was totally out of control with weeds, and I know this area had a giant lamb's quarters, which is edible, but not something I planted. And so there's seeds for that everywhere here, and so I have to really stay on top of it so it doesn't go to its seed cycle again, and maybe I can prevent all of that from happening next year. This is where, just coming out for 20 minutes in the evening and taking care of a little section every day makes such a difference. Also, they're starting to flower. So if I let this go, it's going to send its energy into making that flower and seed. But I actually want the onion, so I'm picking those off. And then those can be used like green onions as well. These are my Cilantro Transplants. That was a good experiment. They all survived, so definitely transplanting when it's raining or the ground is really wet is the way to go. But they're already kind of shooting up and they're gonna seed pretty quick. So I've got to get out here and cut them back, maybe this week. This little patch is garlic, and I did not plant that. It's a volunteer, something I missed last year. The garlic will shoot up a scape like this. It's the same idea with the onion. You want to take that off so that it sends all of its energy into forming the bulb that you want, or the root. This is obviously was a whole head of garlic, because every clove will grow a plant. So when you actually plant it, you separate those cloves and each one will become a plant. But you can see, because this was just a whole head that I missed, it's each clove is growing its own plant. So I figured I'd leave that and see how it turns out. It'll be interesting. Coming up in the next week or so, I'm going to go over to Field's Edge Farm, and Kat's going to kind of take us through the garlic harvesting process. I didn't do garlic this year in my garden, so that'll be fun to let her show you that process. And the reason I didn't do garlic is I've been having some issues. I think some bacteria or something has gotten into my soil that's causing it some problems. It's really drying out and not curing. And so I figured I'd give it a break and see if I can do better in a few years. So this is one packet, small packet of a mix of wildflower seeds. And I didn't know what to expect. Shared with you when they were planted, then we had to cover them because the ground was kind of caking over. It was so early in the season. It was a packet that said you could plant well before the last frost. And look at it. So it'll be interesting to see it once it starts to produce flowers, which shouldn't be too much longer, because I see some buds here. I think this might be cosmos, but there's lots of different flowers in here that I don't know the names of. One of them is blooming. It's a tiny little sweet white flower there. So I always love that look of just such a variety of flowers all mixed together. So this will be really fun to have in the garden, and hopefully it will attract all those beneficial insects that we need for pollination. And these beets are looking great. I'm going to start adding these to my salads. You can just take them. I should get my clippers actually. So I love the flavor of beet greens in a salad. I really prefer that to the actual root. So I mostly harvest these for the greens, but they will make a beetroot, and I will eat them. I think that they're good pickled, and I also think they're good just grated fresh into a salad. But if I just take a few leaves off of each plant, it doesn't hurt the plant. So you kind of get two harvests from this plant. So this was the bed I really had a hard time with, and I still need to get some leaves over it, because you can see how dry it gets on the surface. Those leaves really make a difference. I tried and tried and tried to get something to grow in here. Finally got a few lettuce plants to come up. Beets seem to do the best here. I planted that basil from Delaney's, and then it froze, and so I lost that. So this is kind of there's always a bed that's a challenge. But the radishes are doing pretty good. These are radishes here. You can see I'm going to harvest this one right now. You ready? So that's fun. A little something to add to the salad. And as you harvest and they're getting pretty large, it's good to kind of take every other one, because then you give the others room to grow. And radishes are something that grow pretty quick, so you can succession seed, which means planting every week or so for a harvest throughout the season. I have, one that was planted a few weeks later as I kept trying to get stuff to grow. And here's some, so those will come in a few more weeks. So I'm going to come back out here and add more radish seeds and try to keep it going. And then, of course, I've got these volunteer chives. I probably won't let the chives flower this year because that's causing me a lot of weeds. Over here, I planted a cucumber. Planted actually 3, but only 1 came up. But hopefully it'll work because that's all I need. And the idea here is that it would grow over and I would let it vine on the fence. Here are some more beets that I planted long after these as I kept trying to make things grow. So that's another succession planting. And also here. And down here I transplanted some marigolds that volunteered in the onion patch. So something I need to add to my list is to put leaf mulch over call it the beet bed. And also I want to plant more radish seeds. So down here I planted some Nasturtium seeds. They stay low to the ground, so my idea was that they would hopefully germinate and grow, kind of weave around these sunflowers as they get really tall. This bed I mentioned before has always been challenging for me. It doesn't seem to produce much, so I'm trying to change that with flowers, and it looks like I'm going to because these sunflowers have done so well. They're ready to just shoot up high and produce beautiful flowers. I have also in here a volunteer potato, so maybe with all that fertilizer we added, I'll actually get some good potatoes there. And yeah, it's fun to see something growing here. Further down where this teepee is, I had planted some beans, and they did not germinate. I think mainly it was because they were too old and maybe not viable. I was trying to see if I could get something to go. But it's also, I planted them right before a whole week of rain, and it's possible they tried to germinate, but the soil was too compacted. Because when I got in here and tried to kind of look for the seeds, I mean, even if you look at that, it's really hard. So it'd be hard if you were a seed to push through that. So that may have been what happened as well. So I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do down here. I like my teepee though. So these are the peppers that I originally planted, and they're struggling. Looks like it might come back with, some hot days. You definitely want to get in there and cultivate the soil around your plants, especially after hard rains, because it gets really hard and then the plant can't get what it needs. So this one might make it, but I was thinking that, I was going to lose some more, and I still might. This one's pretty little. They looked better and bigger when I put them in the ground, so we'll see. But that's why I have the other ones up there, in case these don't work. So this week was, the focus was to stay on top of the cultivating. A lot of weeds were germinating here, so I used my stirrup hoe on all all the beds in the whole garden actually this week, and the pathways. I am going to put some mulch on the pathways that will hopefully keep those weeds down. And I'm just going to have to keep using my stirrup hoe, which I'm actually going to get. I usually walk around the garden with that stirrup hoe in my hand, because that way when you see something you can get to it. And I didn't grab it today. But you know, any time you see anything starting to germinate, just scuttling it will take care of it. And that way you're not giving it the chance to go to seed. And so, you know, you have to keep on it. So even though there's nothing in that bed, this bed, or this bed, they have been worked and worked and worked. And so I feel like I'm ready to fill these beds this week, but I'm still trying to decide with what. I have some hog panels, hog wire, that I'm going to have my husband help me to build some structures that some cucumbers can climb, and maybe some pole beans. And I also have some delicata squash. All of those will climb. And so I'm going to try maybe to build some structures here to help keep those vines off of my pathways. Because a lot of times the trouble is you have so much growing, it's hard to get through and get to everything because it just starts to take over. So that'll be this week, just figuring out what to do here. This bottom bed is where I put the squash, the butternut squash, those volunteers I was showing you. And I actually was going to do one of them to show you. But you can see I already have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did these late in the evening last night at about 8. And that's really a good time, because making that transplant when the sun isn't out, you know, helps them to get some time to adjust before they have to take the heat of the sun. And they look great right now, so I think they're going to do fine. And you can see I'm still using that grass as I mow. This grass is green, it's still drying out, and you know, I was told that wasn't the best idea. But this bed, it was cake, like hard clay, and just covering it like I have has made so much difference even. So I feel okay. I just kind of kept it back from the plants. And then down here I broke ground. I've never grown anything down here. I put more sunflower seeds in right here last night. And then against this fence, I'm going to grow loofah gourds for the first time. There's 2 of them already in the ground, and I was going to transplant the other 2 right here to show you how I do that. Loofah gourds are something that you can use to wash dishes or scrub your body, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to grow those myself. So, all right, so here are I actually have 3 Loofah seedlings. This one is awfully small, so I don't know how that one's going to do. They did only germinate at about 50%, so I think I need to learn a little bit more about what they need as they're germinating. I'm carefully pushing this up from the bottom with a stick. And again, my speedling tray does such a nice job of helping the roots swirl around. I just think that's so cool to see the roots. And then you just really have no transplant shock with the way those roots get swirled around that way. So like I said, I've not ever planted anything down here, so I'm going to come back in and spread the same ratio of fertilizer that I was recommended to spread on all of my beds in each of these holes, because they do need a good amount of nutrition. So hopefully they'll do great here, climb the fence, and they kind of look like squash, almost like maybe a large cucumber as they're growing. And then they dry out and you peel back the outside and you've got that internal structure that I'm sure you know of as a loofah. So I read that you could grow maybe 6 per plant, maybe more. So that would be a lot to have for my family and to share, maybe for Christmas gifts. Love that. I had to take my gloves off. It was getting hot. My fingers were sweaty. I don't know how they're going to do down here. I hope they do okay, but I just run out of places for things to climb, so I wanted to make use of this fence. And there we go. Grow nice little loofahs. I'm going to add to my list so I don't forget that I need to add the fertilizer to those holes. So I'm going to put one more butternut squash right here just to show you how I did it. And this is a bed that has not been used much, so I'm still digging out rocks. So I'm just loosening up the hole. We call them hills. Getting that ready. And then, like I said, it's ideal to do this in the evening. So we'll see how this one does compared to the others that were done in the evening. Evening, I mean, after sunset. Maybe that's night to some people. So I'm making a little spot. And then we're going to go up here and take them out. So here's those volunteers. Look, those are the zucchini here, but all of these are butternut squash. So I'm just going to kind of put my fork in a good amount away from the base and just lift it. And 2 per hill is ideal. So if I just get that, I just want to try and keep the dirt all together. So basically I'm disturbing the roots as little as possible. And then I'm going to carry it down. I ended up with a good amount of dirt, so I'll make more room here and just slide it in. And then fill it up around the base. And then also, because I'm on a hillside here, I always try to build up a little, especially down here where it's so steep, so that it just doesn't wash away with a rain, or that water can come in and kind of slow down right here. Let's see. And I just pushed it down. And then I'm going to want to add a little bit of this Harmony fertilizer here. There we go. And then I just need to water it in. All right, so moles have been a problem. The way I know is I haven't had a lot of success with some vegetables that looked really good on the top, like say root vegetables. And I'll see little bites out of them. And voles, I think, are the ones doing this because they actually like to eat the roots and they're vegetarian. So they're like, hey, thanks for the great place to live. And I also could feel, like sometimes I will dig in a bed and I could feel actually the tunnel because the dirt would just kind of collapse. And so there were a lot of signs. And then I saw, in the pathways, raised tunnels, which, is a clear sign. And I decided to get serious this year. I picture myself like, the whack-a-mole with the big mallet. That's me. So I went to Farmer's Supply in downtown Floyd, Virginia, and I bought this, which is a stake, and you put batteries in it. They make some that are solar powered, but you can hear it. It makes a little sound every 30 seconds, and apparently that is a sound of a mole in distress, or maybe a warning that there's a predator nearby or something. So it naturally warns them. And I've moved this around a few times in the garden just kind of to keep them confused. So I'll keep using this. And I think it's really working because I saw some tunnels. You can hear how it goes off about every 30 seconds. Right in here that have since gone away. So I think with the rain and walking on it, it's collapsed and they're not using them. So that's a good thing. I'm going to move this. I just think it's good to keep them guessing. The other thing I did was get my friend the snake at Dollar General. And I've been moving this around the garden too. It actually startles me still, so it's kind of fun. And then from Farmer's Supply, I also bought this. It's mole and vole repellent, which it's basically just castor oil. It's not going to harm anybody, but it's going to keep pests away because apparently it's not comfortable for them to breathe. So it says it will treat up to 2,500 square feet, which is like my garden twice. And you can actually smell it when you sprinkle it. So I treated the garden. There's sort of a method they tell you on the back of how to do it. And so I've done it a couple times, but just kind of sprinkle it lightly over. And that odor kind of keeps them away. And now that I feel like maybe they've moved on, I got this stuff, which is also not going to harm anybody. It's actually organic certified. Strangely, the main active ingredient is dried blood, but you can put a border around the garden, and that would just like keep them away. So I think I'll do that to protect them. So you can see that I'm serious about taking care of the moles. Or voles. I think they're voles. And possibly what's helping the most are real snakes. So my theory is that I have disrupted the voles. They've come out of the ground and trying to find somewhere else more comfortable to be. And then snakes have come in and taken care of the problem. And I have found 2 snake skins in my garden shed. And that's sometimes maybe something that would be scary or uncomfortable. But for me, I'm like, hey, this is great. I've got like helpers in the fight against the voles. So happy to see the snakes in the garden. I'm sure they do a lot more than my little guy here, but we're all working together. So here's the fruits of my labor on trying to grow sweet potato slips, and certainly learned a lot this year. So I'll probably do a lot better next year. Definitely, I think I wouldn't do water. I would actually put them right in soil. So these, once I realized they weren't shooting up any actual leaves, then I put the potatoes in soil. This one was the one that had grown in the very beginning, and it's doing pretty good. They've got some root system there. So this week what I'm going to do is take each little shoot, break it off, and then plant it about a foot apart from each one. down a row in one of those empty beds. And it won't take up that much room. And I don't really need a whole lot here because the ones that I bought at Delaney's, planted them over at my mom's garden, which is much more sunny than mine, and that will do a lot better. But I still want to have a few over here just because I like them and I want to keep an eye on them and see how they grow. So, hey, we did some, and that's good.